Okay. Tell me, what did you learn about him? About him and the methods of science? What are his views? And what are the things that surprised you in his approach? Who wants to talk? Hmm? Satish, did you read that?
Yes, sir.
Please. You rarely take part because you started attending only recently. You missed.
So I was surprised with his views on about the Galileo. So he
Very good.
said
Very
church
good.
was
You are the right person to talk, please. You are surprised by his views on Galileo. Okay, switch on the video if possible. Okay. Hmm. Why are you surprised? What did you expect and what was he doing?
so earlier we know that the church was wrong in imposing like penalty on the Galileo because Earth revolved around the sun. So he justified like church was right in terms of the theory and all these things.
Uh, you mean he justified church was right?
Yeah, based on the circumstances, because he's basically said about the science is based upon the falsifiable.
No, you
Like
stick to Galileo point. Galileo point. Okay. How was he justifying Galileo? That's actually the unusual reading of history, because all history books said that Galileo was right and church was
he
wrong.
said based upon the situation that was prevalent at that time. So he gave the theory of tower argument, like if you're throwing a stone from the tower, then it is going to at the center of the earth. So if the earth is moving, then how the stone is going to be at the same position exactly.
Just
So
one second. Tell me, is this tower argument clear to you? Tower argument is, if you are throwing some stone
yes, sir.
from the top of the tower, if the earth is indeed moving, then the stone should not fall on the bottom of the tower, at the bottom of the tower, because tower must have moved.
Yes, sir,
When,
exactly.
when the when the stone was on its journey in the air. So if the earth was moving, as Galileo claimed, how would a stone fall at the bottom of the tower if thrown from the top of the tower?
Yes,
So
sir.
earth was not moving. So that was an argument put forward against the idea that the earth was moving. So earth must be static. Otherwise, how would a stone fall at the place it was dropped? Of course, from the above. Okay. So it was scientifically argued that Galileo must be wrong.
Yes, sir.
Just one second. Is the argument clear to you,
Yes, sir.
Deepika? Deepika, is the argument clear to you?
So not exactly.
What is that?
Not very clear.
Okay. See, if the earth is moving like this, if earth is moving like this, okay, moving like this, if I drop something on the top of the tower, it should not fall at the bottom of the tower because tower must have moved. For example, if you throw something from the moving bus, will it fall at the place that you threw? No, it will fall much backward, isn't it? So if the tower was moving, because the tower was connected to earth, if you drop, then it can't fall at the place it was dropped, which means the tower was not moving, which means the earth was not moving. Is the argument clear? Deepika, is it clear? Yes or no?
Yes.
Hmm. So Galileo's idea that the earth was moving was considered wrong, I mean scientifically. Whereas history books said that, see, Galileo tried to give all the proof, but the church didn't have couldn't argue, and the church was very blind in its belief. But Fayerabend was saying no. Okay. So Praja, is it clear to you? Okay. And Galileo could not explain. Galileo had no explanation of why the stone was falling at the place it was dropped from the top. Anyway, what is your explanation now? Why is the stone dropped from the tower, top of the tower is falling at the bottom?
Sir, I have read about relative motion, so I will put that.
Exactly. Which relative motion?
So, as in, sir?
The stone.
Yes, sir.
Stone was also moving.
Yes, sir. So it's on the Earth's surface, so it is moving with the Earth also. Both
Not, but it is in the mid-air. It is in the air. It is not on that surface. It is being dropped from the top like this.
from where you are seeing it, right? So when you are seeing from the Earth's surface only, so the relative motion will apply, as in that you are also standing on the surface of Earth, so you are also moving.
That is true. You are moving and the earth is moving, but the stone for some time was not connected to the earth. For example, you drop a stone from the bus, moving bus. Where will it fall? It will fall back. Okay. So how can it fall exactly? I mean, at the place that is dropped, where the earth is moving, because the stone was in the mid-air, not connected.
But air is also part of the Earth. The
That
whole,
is true. You mean to say air is pushing?
yeah,
Inertia.
not going outside this place.
Exactly, Supraja. Inertia is the answer. The stone was already in motion horizontally. Stone was in horizontal motion. Now vertical motion is given due to gravity. But its horizontal motion was not disturbed. Its horizontal motion was not disturbed. In fact, what is the law that says that if the motion is not disturbed, it will continue in the same?
First law of motion.
Exactly. At that time, Newton's first law was not known. So the stone was in horizontal motion. Of course, air friction might reduce, but it would be infinitesimal that it won't be able to be detected during, given those equipment at that time. But there would be some changes. Because maybe air friction will do something to stop. So basically, stone is in motion horizontally, it is not disturbed. Vertical motion is given. And so with the same horizontal component, vertically it will fall. That's all. So it gives the impression that it fell at the same place. At that time, there was no explanation for that. So that particular fact seemed to be defying the idea that the earth was moving. So if that particular fact only is taken into consideration, then the earth was moving should be rejected. But what happened? There it is understood, okay, earth is moving from some evidence, but then for some reason we are not able to explain this stone fact, the tower argument. So let us assume that the certain facts are explained by earth is moving and some facts are explained by earth not moving. Which means there are two theories, earth is moving versus earth is not moving. And over a period of time, earth is moving won the argument. Tell me, do you follow this logic? Vishal, Yam, Vishal, did you
Yes, sir.
follow? Huh?
Yeah, yes, sir.
This is an amazing argument, which means some facts can be explained by one theory and some other set of facts can be explained by some other theory. Which means that a theory need not explain all the facts. You include all these things in your answer on theory and facts. The idea that a theory should explain all the facts according to Fayerabend is wrong. The idea that a theory is wrong if it cannot explain one fact is again wrong. This is completely unusual way of thinking. Shall I tell you one thing? This is the Anthropological Thought is a book that I revised, written long ago. And sometimes I take up just to see if I learned something new. But do you know, one very important thing that I learned after revising this book is the fact that there is one person called Fayerabend. And he proposed a new way of thinking. In fact, in my old book, I used the word phenomenological approach, but because phenomenology is not mentioned in the syllabus, I put it postmodernism. But the questions were coming on phenomenology. So the idea, we have the idea that if a theory cannot explain a fact, theory should be rejected. Fayerabend is saying, no. That is very unusual. Which means theory is only a likely explanation. Now you understand the difference between a theory and the association we discussed in methods. Association is a small thing. It is a fact, empirical fact. Something fell down and fell at the same place. That is an association, like that. Theory is an explanation. Why of it? And Fayerabend is saying there can be multiple explanations. One explanation may explain some facts, another explanation can explain other facts. So if you reject a theory on the ground that it cannot explain one fact, then you may be missing one very important theory which is going to explain many more facts. So he is unusually saying that the student should be taught to accept theories which don't explain all the facts. This is an unusual way of thinking about science. And one of the titles of his book is Farewell to Reason. A scientist writing a book on farewell to reason. So the point is, theory is a way of looking at things, a way of explaining facts. Theory is not ultimate. And contradictory theories can exist. And not only that they can exist, Fayerabend is saying they should exist. And then he is also saying people should have the freedom to choose one theory instead of the other. Like you choose different religions, different viewpoints. We are familiar with conflict view, functionalist view, or theories of caste. We accept there can be multiple views, but Fayerabend is saying there can be multiple theories in science. And that is how it should be. Like there are multiple views in social science, there should be multiple views in physics and chemistry and biology. Very unusual. And one theory will explain some facts and another theory will explain some other facts. When some theory comes which can explain all the facts, then that theory is superior. But that is not final. So just because a fact cannot be accommodated, theory should not be rejected. One should look into, okay, that's an interesting way to look at it. So how many facts will it explain? It means in medicine, homeopathy may cure some, and some others in nature cure may cure some. Maybe allopathy may cure certain things. But we need not assume that allopathy is the final answer, is the accurate answer. So he's saying multiple views, multiple perspectives, multiple theories, and contradictory ones. And he thinks a student in science should be trained to think like this. So the idea of scientific attitude means that if you know a fact and if the theory cannot accommodate, then the theory is rejected, is wrong. A theory is an explanation of some data, a why of some data. Some data cannot be explained, maybe it can be explained by some other theory. So inconsistent, contradictory theories is the nature of science. But Fayerabend is saying that the people forget how the science evolved. So when one paradigm is rejected and people take the particular paradigm so supreme, so final, and they reject all other kinds of evidence, all other facts. They say it's unscientific, cannot be true. These are very, very important. Do you know, most important, superstition. Now, if you ask me, is the superstition regarding the science is true, it is final. The finality of science is one of the superstitions. I know people don't think science is final in the sense that a law is final, but people think, okay, its methods are final, its paradigm is not final, not like that. Even the methods are not final, ways of thinking is not final, methodology is not final. Okay, it is just that some people chose and they are in a better position to explain many facts, and that's how we developed. There is no doubt about it. I don't think that views in physics is similar to views in social sciences. Maybe views in physics can be easily verified, tested, discarded. I don't think they are equal, but what is important is to know that there is a similarity. Not only that facts are final, not final, and laws are not final, but perspectives, methodologies, and ways of thinking is not final, which means what is regarded as scientific and not scientific is also not final. In fact, there are many experiments in physics on global consciousness project and many things which I did not discuss when we were doing religion, but there are many arguments against explaining, confining physics only to those forces like gravity, electricity, magnetism, and nuclear. There seem to be other forces, force of mind, and things like that. There is enough evidence. Many new things are there. Physical phenomena being caused by mental phenomena. A lot of evidence is there. But all such things are declared unscientific now. Okay, so leaving that within science, Feyerabend is saying that science is about perspectives, and don't reject a perspective on the ground that it doesn't explain a particular fact, which means falsifiability, which Karl Popper gave as a criteria is not the right criteria. Karl Popper gave a criteria that science is something that can be falsified. Okay, T is equal to 2 pi root L by G is a law. If one experiment shows it is wrong, then the law is rejected. But Fayerabend says no. One experiment showed that that is wrong, but it doesn't mean law is wrong. Let us see some other, this experiment can be explained by some other ways, in some other way. So science has perspectives, and definitely this gives freedom to a scientist to explore new ways of thinking, Okay, so essentially, why we are doing in postmodernism is that any theory, even in science, Feyerabend is saying, is a way to look at things. A theory is not final. Theory is not the truth. A theory is a way to look at things. A theory doesn't accommodate and need not accommodate all facts, which means there is a lot of subjectivity in theory selection. And Feyerabend says sometimes some theories became popular because it just so happened so. Not that there is really so much of logical and rational support. Some people chose some historical reasons. In fact, in medicine also, the idea that the fat is the enemy, fat contributes to heart attack and things like that is one of the misleading lines in medicine, which is responsible for so many diseases. I didn't discuss that. There is a view that how that particular viewpoint came that guided modern medicine, which is responsible for so many lifestyle disorders. I didn't do that elaborately, but one day I would like to do it. So Feyerabend is saying that sometimes some particular viewpoints may have been chosen and they may have become powerful arguments, like Marxism became, like Islam became, Christianity became. A particular scientific perspective also becomes a dominant way of thinking. Satish, do you understand? Do you agree? Did you understand this?
Yes, sir.
But isn't the whole thing very unusual?
Yes, sir. But according whatever Feyerabend is saying, so ultimately church was wrong, right? Because they rejected the
That is
Galileo
true.
theory.
That is true. Ultimately, they were wrong. Mm, that is true. But what do you say about that? I mean, it is. So, what do you want to say about that? Ultimately, they're wrong. But the point is, a theory need not explain all the facts. That is the point. Is that point agreed?
But still, ultimately, science is based upon the reason, evidence, and all these things. So,
That is true. But this also is a reason that a theory need not explain all the facts. Do you see, this man Feyerabend may write a book on farewell to reason, but he is using reason only to convince us. Isn't it?
yes, sir.
He's using reason. He is not saying that he got a revelation from God and people should listen to him. He is using reason only to identify that reason is in fact very vast. And he is explaining through reason the limitations of theory. Isn't it?
So, because there are many things which were earlier pretend to be true, were ultimately proved wrong, and there were many things.
Exactly. Which means the present one also is not final.
Yes, absolutely.
See, scientists know that the present one is not final, but they don't normally think the methodology also is not final. He's saying the methodology, the ways of thinking themselves are not final. What you regard as scientific is not final. Do you know Newton, the gravitational force would never have been regarded as scientific at all? Because it's how can there be connection between two things which are unconnected? Isn't it? Newton's law, because we have been told so many times, we think it is a scientific truth. But is it not very unusual? For example, if you push, it will move. That you understand. But if you don't push and if it is moving, it will continue to move. How do you visualize the first part of Newton's law? It's very counterintuitive. In fact, Newton, is a kind of a magician. He did all kinds of things. Only a part of what he did became science, but he did much more. Keynes explored, economist Keynes explored Newton's discarded papers. He was shocked what all the things that Newton did. He did all kinds of things which the present age considers properly superstitious, like alchemy, all kinds of things. Finding out Jesus' birth. He did many things. He's a magician. And again, we discussed the role of hypothesis. Hypothesis is vast. A creative person is basically a magician. He doesn't have a rigid notion of what is science. He redefines, he explores, he doesn't accept the limitations. He is a magician to the fellow people, to the fellow scientists. So it is out of that rich imagination, hypothesis comes. Hypothesis is a fantasy thinking. You know, Newton, I don't remember the exact thing what he said. In one conversation, Newton said, this is how it works. The fellow scientist was shocked. How do you know? Newton said, I always assumed. How do you assume? Can you prove? Then Newton found the proof. Newton didn't think it was needed to prove. Newton assumed, which means there is enormous power of intuition in Newton. Newton feels.
So I think the power of intuition is also related to the Tesla. He was also
Okay. Yes.
the imagination. And all.
Yes, yes. Rich imagination. Rich imagination. Lot of creativity. That is not scientific. It's magic. An insignificant part of that magical thinking becomes science.
So there are many things which are also related to the imagination in the religions as well.
Exactly.
You know,
Many things. I didn't go after proof, but I did so many things. I released so many videos on that meditation, afterlife. I examined so many arguments.
So also,
So,
sir,
hmm.
science a lot became about individuals, sir.
Hmm?
So
What is
like
that?
it became a lot about individuals, the scientists,
Exactly.
so
Hmm.
the like the Newton became so important that like whatever he said was never
Exactly.
questioned even after such a
Exactly.
long time.
That's true. But before that, how did Newton become? How did Einstein become? They did not accept the previous. They thought of things which would be regarded unscientific. So that's what Fayerabend is talking about. This is paradigm shift. Within a paradigm, a particular ways of thinking would be regarded scientific. And when paradigm shifts, new ways of thinking. So in a new paradigm, in an old paradigm, something of the new would be considered unscientific. That is what Fayerabend is saying. So what is a scientific itself keeps changing. So basically, in his farewell to reason, he is not asking us to be rational. He is asking us to see the limitation of reason. But he is only using reason to convince us. That is a different issue. He is not saying, God told me this and you shut up. Okay. But how did he arrive at? Probably he didn't coolly reason. He was angry with some people. He was angry with scientists. He thought these people must be wrong. And so he walked out.
It is written that he was very critical with the generation of scientists after World War.
Yes, yes. Because they think that they are not really moving. They have not understood the creativity of science. They made something, this is science, and judging everybody as what is scientific and what is not. Okay. Now come to this question, phenomenology. To all these people, there is one extraordinary thinker, that is Kant, Immanuel Kant. Okay. It was Kant who gave this phenomenology. Just 1 second. See, on this book, Sociological Thought book, only Marx was properly discussed in sociology, but everybody else I included out of my interest. Freud, Nietzsche, um, Kant, and Krishnamurti. So Kant is one such person. Okay. Kant is the one who gave this phenomenology. Okay. He is a revolutionary thinker, philosopher. See, what he said was, see, his argument is very, very simple. One simple way to understand is that, see, we are seeing things because we have eyes. Is that true or not?
Yes, sir.
We are seeing things because we have eyes, and a blind person can't see. Just because blind person cannot see something, it does not mean it doesn't exist. Isn't it? Yes or no? For example, color. Blind person can get certain things through touch, but can he get sense of color? He can't. So does it mean color doesn't exist? Which means that color exists. I mean, color is perceived because we have vision. In the same way, because we have touch, we can sense temperature, hardness. Because we have taste, we have a tongue, we can taste, we can hear, which means we are seeing the reality that can be captured through five senses. But who knows, the reality may be something different, and we may not be having those senses to capture. Yes or no? Agreed or not?
Yes, sir.
Very much logical. For all you know, there may be some other person, some other ghost or somebody who is watching us online. But the Zoom can't capture this. Given the Zoom technology, it can't capture a ghost. But we don't know. There may be some other way by which the ghost also is following. So how can we say we don't? You may say, see, we all, whatever you are saying, we all agree. But then all of us have only five senses and mind. We don't have some other sense. In fact, our senses also operate in a particular range. For example, insects have different senses, different tastes. They have their sound frequency is different from vision frequency. So just because we humans said that this is the reality does not mean that is the reality. Just like blind people have a code on how to negotiate, we also have a code.
So more precisely, it's more related to the perspective.
Exactly. Which means, as Kant said, the reality as it is can never be known as it is or in itself. Can never be known. Reality in itself can never be known. But what is being known, he said, phenomena. Phenomena. Which means what we are seeing, feeling, is phenomena and not the thing in itself. Thing in itself can never be known. Whatever we can capture through senses, we are saying that is reality. But we don't know what is actually there, and there is no way of knowing. So Kant is not saying that if we improve our methods, we will know. Kant is saying the impossibility of knowing thing in itself. Tell me, is this agreeable? Nikhil? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So it is in this context, the idea of phenomena came. Phenomena is not the same as thing in itself.
What is phenomena, sir?
Exactly. Phenomena is what you are seeing, feeling, understanding, which can never be equated with thing in itself. You can't ask what is thing in itself. Thing in itself is something that is true beyond your perception. That concept cannot be known, no matter what you try. Tell me, is this sensible or not?
Yes, sir.
I mean, not only sensible, it is too obvious. Isn't it?
So in meditation, they say you're not the body, you're not the mind.
We will look into that, but we'll just go step by step. It's a basic proposal, is it not? Isn't it so? And then Kant doesn't stop there. Kant goes further that mind is not a blank slate. Mind is not blank. He says, mind is born with the question of why, time, space. Mind has this concept of time, space, and cause. Apart from the five senses which are guided by mind, mind is taken as sixth sense actually. Mind supports all other five senses because eyes by themselves can't operate. Eyes plus mind gives the vision. Ears plus mind gives hearing. Okay, so mind can be taken as the base, the sixth sense. So Kant is saying mind has what cause, time, space. Okay, so because of what Kant says, we think of everything in terms of why, when, and how, or why, where, and when. So Kant said we perceive reality in terms of certain questions. Not only the sensory limitation, but our questioning also is in a particular way. God created the world. You will definitely ask who created God then. Then there is no end to that. So Kant said we are investigating reality through a certain set of questions, a particular way of thinking, and with certain limitations, because of which we will never know the truth. We will never know the thing in itself. Then in that context, Kant made a very provocative statement that mind gives its laws to nature. Mind gives its laws to nature. That is, the idea that the mind is unraveling the reality is not true according to Kant. Just like a Muslim is looking at Muslim related issues, a Brahmin is looking at Brahmin related issues, man is looking at reality in his own way, which means it is ultimately subject to phenomena. Kant inspired Hegel, Hegel inspired Marx. Kant also inspired Schopenhauer. Kant is a big breakthrough, a landmark development in Western philosophy. Okay. So he is essentially saying that the world is perceived subjectively. There is nothing like objectivity. See, remember, saying something that this is not true, this is not objective, is not the same thing as there is no objectivity as such. See, one can dispute this is objectively wrong and I can prove this is wrong and something else is objective. That is different. But this is to say there is nothing like objectivity. And it is this thinking gave rise to what is called phenomenological perspective. Broad title being postmodernism. Postmodernism is mentioned in the syllabus, so anthro syllabus. But questions are asked on phenomenology, it is the same thing. Okay. So essentially, let me summarize that there is nothing like objectivity. Tell me, before that, is Kant's perspective clear to you? Any questions? Two things. Did you understand? That is one. Number two, isn't it very counterintuitive? Counterintuitive means it's very difficult to think it is so, unless you are taught. And even after you are taught, it is difficult to understand, difficult to feel it.
Sir, why is he so sure that nothing is objective? Is it because there are so many
If
perspectives?
there is something, there are so many persons, that is true. But do all blind people together can discover the color? They can't, right? All blind people? No. Which means it is not in their hands. In the same way, mankind also will never know because man is also subjected to certain limitations.
So the objectivity that we assume regularly in the day-to-day life
Is an assumption that all these similarly working senses, this seems to be true. I saw it. Do you agree, Nikhil? Nikhil also says, yes, I agree. That's called objectivity.
So if majority are accepting the subjective thing, it is becoming objective.
Exactly. Wow. Exactly. It is ganging up. So it was thought that the Newton threw light on the reality. But Kant is saying nobody threw light on reality. Reality can never be known. It is simply Newton said something which can be understood by others, fellow people. Because they share similar limitations. So do you see how Fayerabend came? Kant is the author of all this shocking thinking. I included him on the top because I felt that Indian philosophy has to learn a lot from Kant, because Indian philosophy, enlightenment, assume that they will know everything. Everything is visible. I said no. In the cartoon on Kant, I said there is a gate at heaven. Buddha is trying to go directly. Kant said no. You stand in queue. You may have been enlightened, but no, there is no entry. So I thought Indian philosophy assumed that enlightenment meant knowing everything. I was shocked that there is nothing like knowing everything. Kant showed the limitation to all knowledge. Enlightened or not, it doesn't matter.
But sir, India in as well, we have been told a story like there were five people, blind people, who came across elephants or somebody.
That is true. That is true. But in India, it is assumed that if you are enlightened, you have a full vision of the elephant. So we assume that somebody can know the truth. Most people don't know. That is the philosophy we developed. But Kant is saying, no, nothing. It's just that you may know the elephant, but it can never be the final. You may have, your vision may be greater than the people who are blind, but it is never final. So this discussion has been there since Plato times. Okay, Plato also discussed, but Kant gave finality to this. That's why it is said that nobody can claim to be a philosopher without knowing Kant and after Kant. Because Kant explored the basic fundamental limitation. There is nothing like knowing everything.
Sir, Buddha has also said.
Buddha also is the same limitation, because he gave the impression he knew everything.
But he said, like, don't believe whatever I'm saying, just believe.
That is true. You don't believe whatever I am saying, and you go by what you have understood. But he did not say there are things which can never be known. This ultimate limitation is never emphasized in Indian philosophy. Enlightenment is taken as the step that reveal everything.
So according to Kant, no one can be enlightened.
Exactly. No, in Kant's definition, you can use enlightenment to a different process. Enlightenment need not be equated with knowing everything. So it's a different thing. We'll look into that. That's a different issue. So, coming to more application point of view, subject and object are linked. That is the point. Subject and object are linked, which means subject is not free from the object. That is, observer and observed. Observed, linked. Which means your theory is never free from yourself. All this is postmodernism, phenomenology. There is no finality, there is no independence from the subject. Subject-object linked, observer and observed are linked. Then what may be postmodern approach to a study of phenomena? Mostly postmodern approach or phenomenological approach is about try to get the links between the two. Don't believe in objectivity. How you may have been prejudiced? What are your assumptions in observing like this? Why did you create these concepts? So Durkheim's suicide rate, okay, we take it as a scientific method in sociology. But then the postmodernist would ask, first of all, what are you calling it as a suicide? Why are you calling this particular thing a suicide? Suppose somebody drives rashly and kill, you call it suicide or not? Did he kill himself? Yes. Negligent? Maybe. But you are not likely to call that suicide. But why are you not calling it so? So tell me about yourself. So it is not about others. It is more about yourself. Somebody like suicide bomber. Technically, that is a suicide. But postmodernist can ask, can you tell me why are you considering it a suicide? Why don't you consider it simply a murder? Why are you calling it a suicide? Murder where he is a collateral damage. So he will ask, tell me your ways of thinking. And because of your ways of thinking only, you got all this data. You arrive at a suicide rate because it is all because of your thinking of what is suicide. You have the dimensions of anemic suicide, thus that suicide, this suicide, all is there in Durkheim's mind, according to postmodernists. For example, how did Durkheim classify this is a suicide? And he would go by the data, you know, but did he leave suicide note? If he left, it may be, but if he hasn't, then some certain assumptions are made. So postmodernists would examine how is it so? Interpretative approach also is like this. But interpretative approach is just interpretation, whereas postmodernism is an idea that there is no objectivity possible. Interpretative approach, postmodernism, both come under non-positivism. But interpretative approach is that we are not for loss, we interpret. That's what we discussed last time. But the postmodernism is about not only we are not for loss, but we don't think there is an objective truth. So which means it becomes a critic of the method, critic of the investigation, exploration into your own thinking, why you are arriving at those conclusions. So science, so-called science also is one way of looking at things. It is not that the scientist is objective, everybody else is subjective. Scientist's objectivity also is his own subjectivity. He has a statistical proof that this, for example, who is called an economist now, economist should say all kinds of things, supply, demand, ding dong, all that statistics, Dell, then he will be called economist. By the time he will lose common sense. So any person who makes a profound common sense argument but says the whole thing is wrong, he will not be called an economist. Because they have defined economists in a particular way. You should have this mathematics, you should have this econometrics training, and you should show everything in demand and supply. Even an obvious thing, you should prove it in demand and supply only. Then only it is economics. See? Which means people become economists because of peculiar ways of thinking. So this is postmodernism. It is investigating into not the object, but the subject that is trying to study the object. Looking at the interconnections between the subject and the object. Somebody is called a terrorist. Why should somebody be called a terrorist? If you are on the side of the terrorist, you call him a freedom fighter. If you are on the side of the government, you call him a terrorist. And because government has the monopoly over TV, radio, and newspapers, now somebody becomes a terrorist. Is it not describing something in a particular way and shaping everything? This is what Foucault said. Foucault said, power shapes knowledge. Power shapes knowledge. Knowledge is not objective. Our freedom struggle, power shaping knowledge. Britishers are a villain. Jinnah is a villain. Syed Ahmad Khan is a communalist. Okay, so all good people and bad people, like a TV serial. All can be lined up in history book. It is simply a kind of a storytelling.
Like Western countries are trying to impose democracy in all over the world.
Exactly.
And it is creating more problem in like
At certain places it creates. So we need to see how a perspective is generated and how a perspective is imposed on others. Even in psychological concepts like love, what is love? People have defined love in a particular way and want to realize love in a particular way. and boy and girl quarrel about whether they love each other or they don't, and what do you do when they don't love after marriage, before marriage? But who said this is love? This is the evidence, or this is the nature? Some kind of myth making is going on. Same thing about nationalism. So somebody like Derrida, I want you to read these thinkers in sociological thought. I covered Derrida, Foucault, and then 3-4 people also come under postmodernism, but at least read Derrida, Foucault, and Kant. So Derrida said deconstruction, deconstruct nationalism, deconstruct love, deconstruct terrorism. Deconstruction means a concept is coming like this, but deconstruct, look into assumptions, dilute, and find out what is the meaning. Nationalism is one such. Okay, people are afraid of being anti-national. They're being scared that they may be called anti-national. Okay, we haven't seen anybody who says, yes, I am anti-national. No. Saying that people are afraid of being called terrorists. Particular words are used in a particular way, and some people are made villains according to those definitions. But who is doing all this? Power. So, which basically means that when we think we are objective, we are not. All this may come down to Marxian idea that your knowledge is not objective. Your knowledge, according to Marx, comes from base. Foucault is postmodernist, also Marxist. But Marxism is one kind of limitation that technology and economy will influence thought. But what is more important is that thought in itself is limited. You think in a particular way, which means there is nothing like objectivity. And if you want to be objective, at least try to see the link between yourself and what you want to study. So postmodernism is a different way of thinking. And as of now, postmodernism is the last word in almost all the social sciences. This is about relativism. It is about giving up on objectivity. But this does not mean anything is equally true. Anything is equally true. It may be that some perspectives are more helpful, but the idea that there is truth, there is finality, and it is objective is what is being questioned. It is not. It is nobody's idea that anything can happen. Anything is equally true. So Fayerabend says, in fact, in science, it almost looks like anything can be true, but it does not mean anything can be true. It almost looks like, because what you think is wrong may turn out to be right. So he's saying it looks like anything can go. So postmodernism doesn't mean anarchy. It doesn't mean anything is equally true. It doesn't mean you should not act, and nothing to do with action here. You do what you think is right at that time. There it ends. You cannot seek the final truth. There is nothing like final truth. So you are this optional you are taking given this information, given your set of prejudices or the teachers or whatever. Just go by it. That's all. So this is a new way of thinking and most modern. Okay. Vishal, you wanted to ask something?
So these the last three thinkers that you mentioned, they are not available in the Anthro booklet.
Yes, that is true. I mean, at least 5-6 thinkers are covered in sociological thought. I didn't include them.
So when I looked at other mainstream books or the topics on postmodernism, so they are discussing the Foucault and the...
No, this book is better. I'll try to get a Xerox of those copy pages. Just like I gave Fayerabend, I'll take some chapters from Sociological Thought and Post. Derrida and Foucault will do. Who are the others mentioned? You can give me the list, but I covered many more thinkers in sociological thought.
Yeah, basically Foucault, Derrida, and under Jean something is there.
Sartre. Okay, Badre. So many people are there, but you can include Derrida and Foucault. I'll give those two. Fine. And Kant. Okay. If you can mention Kant as the or a source, and then Derrida and Foucault will do. Phenomenological perspective. Okay. Okay. Any questions? So in the methodology also, but now let us make distinction between interpretative and postmodernism. Interpretative means that it is not loss, it is not positivist, but interpretive. But interpretatives may claim that this is my best interpretation. Okay. When one says that different interpretations are possible, there is no final interpretation, then he becomes more like postmodernist. Okay. And all this is non-positivism. What is non-positivism? The idea that the methods of science are not applicable. Okay. But if you are taking Fayerabend as a scientist, then you can say they are applicable. Normally, when we say methods of science are not applicable, you are not taking Fayerabend. You are taking general impression of science. Okay, general impression of science is that experiment, observation, T is equal to 2 pi root L by G, loss, generalizations, and the finality, which can be improved on, and falsification. If a fact doesn't fit, law to be discarded. That is positivism. And people try to be like that in social sciences also. In sociology, Kant, Durkheim. But then positivism, next interpretative approach, and then postmodernism. And in between, you can cover functionalism, structural functionalism. To any question on methods, you please include these thinkers' perspectives, and then see how the methods have developed. Always link methods with theoretical perspectives to enrich your answer. Is it clear? So that is about phenomenological approach. So let me see some more questions. So you can write any question on something like facts and theory, quantitative, qualitative. You can start from positivism and go up to postmodernism. Same question. Examine ethnomethodological and phenomenological perspectives as critic of positivism. Same question. Ethnomethodology, phenomenology also same thing. And next, postulates of positivism and post-positivism. See, all the names same. Post-positivism. Post-positivism. Non-positivism. Ethnomethodology. Postmodernism. Phenomenology. All same. Positivist. For example, write perspective on fact, value, and objectivity. Take this question. Q. Fact, value, and objectivity. Or is non-positive methodology scientific? Is non-positive methodology. So what kind of a question is this? Scientific. So many basic postulates of positivism and post-positivism. So what is your answer? Is non-positive methodology scientific?
So here we might have to define scientific by like the way Fayerabend described being scientific. That like to
Anyway, be careful and use quotations. I don't think examiner will understand Fayerabend and somebody like that. You have to explain. You have to explain. Use quotations. Because thought is abstract. Thought is especially at this postmodernism is quite abstract. Okay, sorry. Is post-positivism scientific? I mean, why give that? You just explain what is post-positivism or postmodernism and why it is useful, why it is an important methodology. I mean, why I'm saying is that if you define Feyerabend way, this is scientific, not scientific, I don't think he will understand it all. It is too confusing.
But usually positivism is associated with being scientific, logical, and reasonable. So we will have to just break that.
That is why then you say non-positive methodologies are there and they are valid. Only that much. I don't think examiner will know Feyerabend. I mean, he may by chance know, but you can't expect. I don't think so. Feyerabend is unusual. I haven't seen him being mentioned in these books. Okay. I mean, at least that is my understanding. I don't think. Did anybody mention Feyerabend in anything that you studied, Vishal?
No, sir, I have not come across.
That's right. Feyerabend is my own, like Bruce Lee. So whatever the unique things we are doing, be cautious. But Feyerabend is a very respected scientist. One asteroid is named after him. Asteroid or star, sorry. Star is named after him, I think. But Derrida, Foucault, and others, they can be.
Foucault is very known, but people hardly quote Foucault because it's so.
Because they don't understand. This is very difficult to understand, let me tell you. They'll just read subject to it. I mean, they'll just memorize few points and then dump. Yeah, it is over. It is difficult to understand what is this. Okay. Basic postulates of positivism and post-positive. But please be prepared on quotations. Quotations are very important.
Sir, regarding this answer writing, so for questions like is non-positive methodology scientific, or do you agree? For such questions, and we previously discussed about the introduction, where we give the whole picture in the introduction.
Fine. In this case, non-positive methodology is an important aspect of methodology in sociological investigation. That's all. Though not that much only, I think, can be understood. Only that much.
So my question is, for such probing questions in the introduction. Is
Yes.
it right to say
Exactly.
that
Right.
we agree or we do not agree?
Yes, yes, you give it. No, all these questions, remember, all these questions assume that there is place for non-positivist method. Here the tricky part is what does he think about the scientific, that's all. Usually the literature is developed, okay, let me tell you what is the confusion. Literature is developed like this, science is like this, and some people have rejected science, and this is positivism. Whereas I read somewhat differently. I critique what actually science. It is in that sense. So basically, you may, I mean, why, if you, so I said that the science also is different. If you say science also is different, then postmodernism is scientific. But examiners are not likely to assume that the science is different. So Fayerabend is so completely off the track. So, I mean, off the mainstream. So normally science is like this, and sociology, anthropology need not follow the scientific method strictly. So that is the expected answer. I don't know. Did you understand? Redefining science and then so calling it scientific is very difficult. Maybe you can answer in an interview, but in mains, it's difficult to convey.
What do you suggest we approach for mains for such questions?
In mains, non-positivism is an important method. Scientific methods are limited, and interpretative approach, postmodernism are the ways. That is the expected answer. If the UPSC gives an outline, I think that outline will be along those lines. But critiquing science, there is a different way of looking at science is quite difficult. Difficult argument to convey in examination in limited number of words. I mean, that is my understanding. I mean, is my point clear? Okay. But definitely, examiners assume that non-positivism is a necessary, a valid approach to the study of social phenomena. Okay, but they are more likely to think this is not scientific, but we don't know in what sense he uses the word. But so maybe you can say something different. The views of science are changing. Fayerabend is an example, and then give. But remember, whenever you are moving away from the mainstream, when you think this may not be the expected answer, you spend more time, give quotations, be more careful. Don't write in a way, yes, I know. No, he won't understand. Okay. At least, is my point clear to you?
Can we talk about empirical validation when they say scientific?
Which one?
For
Empirical.
this question, empirical.
Exactly. Empirical, scientific mean one and the same. Empirical means to be verified. But this is not about verification. The theory is about the link between the verified facts and explanation. Theory is about explanation, not about the verified facts. Some facts are verified, some are not. But anyway, one thing that I can tell you about writing on thought is that use quotations, lively examples, and try to make it as simple as possible and at the same time as authentic as possible. So don't try to convey some very abstract thing and expect the examiner to appreciate that abstraction. Not like that. He won't have time. Go for quotations, go for lively examples and diagrams. Any quotation, they would love it. Yes. Any proof that you are not thinking, they will appreciate. Okay. So that